My name is Mary Frances Parks Hammond. Now, I was born February 2nd, 1946 in Little Rock, Arkansas. When I was born, my dad and my brother had gone to get the doctor, and I was born at home with just me and my mama and my sister, and she was 16 months old. And I was born right there at home, and I made it to 77. William Roscoe and Ava Elvira Parks. That's my mom and dad. Here's a picture of my grandpa and grandma. My grandpa is Lee Duncan, and my grandma was Birdie Holloway, and my grandpa married her years ago, of course, but he was in love with her sister. And when he went to ask the father about getting married to her, the father said, "No, but I will give you her sister." Larry's mom and dad, John and Agnes Hammond, and they passed away several years ago, and but that's what they looked like. Grandpa always wore his overalls. She started wearing pink pants at one point, and we all remembered her by her pink pants. And that's me in my senior year, and look at that hair. That I never cut my hair until Mark was born, and Larry hated long hair on women, so I cut my hair. I lived in Arkansas for a few years, and then I moved to Oklahoma. I went to kindergarten in Oklahoma. After kindergarten, I moved to California. But when I lived in Arkansas and I was very young, our house caught on fire, and it burned to the ground. And the only thing we got out was the clothes we had on, our night clothes and our shoes. That was all we got out. But God still saved us from it. My dad followed the fruit. He was a fruit picker. And so we followed the fruit. And wherever the fruit was ripe, that's where we went. We lived in many places in California. And I went to school at many, many different schools. But he finally became a greenskeeper at golf courses. So he took care of the greens. And he was a painter and this is my dad I'm talking about. He was a painter and a paper hanger, we used to call him, for years. And that's how I grew up, with one brother and one sister. I wanted to be a preacher. And I did preach a lot to my kids. But my mom always wanted to be a preacher, and I just was following in her footsteps. I wanted to be a preacher. And that as my mom got older, and she always told us, "Don't keep me at home when I'm older. Put me in a rest home so I can preach to those people." Well, as she got older, we put her in a rest home for therapy because she needed to have a hip bone replaced, the therapy from that. And she was there 2 weeks, and she said, "Get me out of here." And I said, "But Mom, you wanted to preach to the people." She goes, "Not anymore." So she came home, so now I don't have any desire to go to the rest home. My mama was a jewel, absolutely jewel. She loved the Lord with all of her heart. And my dad loved the Lord, but he's a little wishy-washy. But I had a very good mom and dad. Yeah. My mom used to take my sister and I to the thrift store once a week, and we would get new clothes. And people would say, "How do you dress your kids so nice?" Well, we didn't have money because my dad was a field worker, and we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so we would go to the thrift store, and she would buy us really nice clothes, and we dressed really cute for little girls. And I still love going to thrift stores today. When I was growing up as a child, I remember having fried potatoes and pinto beans and cornbread. And till this day, that's our favorite, is the fried potato part. So, I remember so much about my mom, but the biggest thing is that she loved the Lord with all of her heart. And she taught me to love the Lord. And even from a little child, I remember Mom always took us to church, and she didn't have the best transportation always either, but we always went to church, and my mom she was just so special to me. My best friend as a child, I don't even remember their names, but my best friend as a teenager, I met Kathleen Cherry Massengale when I was a sophomore in high school. And till this day, we are best friends. We are like sisters. She is just, we're very, very close. A couple of years ago, we decided to go to Alaska. And so we did. We went and spent 10 days in Alaska with another friend named Lily. And it's just like, we've never been separated. It's just, she's a lifelong friend. I'm a very lifelong friend. Yeah. My siblings, when I was growing up, was only one brother and one sister. I did have two sisters that passed away and a baby brother that passed away. But my sister was just 16 months older than I am. And so, she had her friends and I had my friends, and they weren't always the same friends. But we were always together, and then my brother, I have to tell a story about my brother. He was the older one. He got in trouble more than we did. And then my sister, and if she ever watches this, she got in trouble more than I did. But my brother used to like to play marbles or shoot dice, with his friends. And he would pay my sister and I not to tell on him. And so we get a nickel if we don't tell on him. But, my sister and I were just, we were always together, and I don't remember a lot, but as we grew older, we got our own friends, but yet at the same time we knew each other's friends too, and they were mostly church friends. We got our friends from church, and so, yeah.
Watch it.
Oh, you want your picture taken? I'll take a picture, David.
1, 2, 3. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. The girl did it herself. I didn't even know. I knew you had that on.
When I was very young, in kindergarten, in fact, my sister, we were getting ready to move, and my sister and our friend decided to go to Safeway to get boxes for my mom because she wanted us to, move. Well, my sister and her friend decided they needed some candy. Well, who better to do it than the little one? So I stole the first bag of candy, put it in the box, and we went home. And halfway home, we decided to have some candy. We sit out in the trailway. The little girl's brother came, and we wouldn't share our candy. No way, And so he goes and tells on us. Here comes my mom. Oh, yeah, she was not happy with us. She turned her two little girls, a kindergarten and first grader or second grader, around right back to the Safeway store. And I had to tell them that I stole the candy and pay for it. And the lady said, well, you can have the candy now that you paid for it. My mom goes, oh, no. She is not getting that candy. And we got in a heap of trouble. And the little girl didn't even get in trouble. That's a moment that I'll never forget. My high school years, Kathy was my very best friend. In fact, we were in choir together, and she was the piano player, and I got an A for turning the pages for her as she played the piano. I had a lot of acquaintances, but my real friends was one throughout high school. My first job probably, maybe it was caregiving for an older couple, but I also was a waitress at Greyhound Bus Depot, 10th Street, which is no longer there. And then I was a travel agent, and I worked at Del Monte Cannery for 13 years. And then I worked at Tri-Valley for just one season. But back and way up when I was a kid, I picked apples in Sebastopol. And the funny story is I worked at a shrimp factory. There was a lady that, pardon me for doing this, but she'd go all the time. And there were flies. And they land on her tongue. It was gross. But it left a memory there that my shrimp factory business, where I worked, we cleaned shrimp. And then I worked at Rostam Purina Turkey Factory. And so I packed turkeys into a sleeve so it would have ground turkey. So, yeah. So I've had a few jobs. I was 17 in high school still, and I'll never forget the day. He was a little older than I am, and then his best friend, Bill Champ, had a little red Volkswagen, and he brought Larry over to the church that I was at. And he came in and got me and says, I got somebody I want you to meet in the parking lot. And I went out, and there was Larry. Well, it wasn't a, romantic thing at first, because I had to get another boyfriend in between. We met at church in the parking lot, and then I changed churches and started going to his church, which was Assembly of God on Hatch Road. And so we started dating, and that's at 18. I got married. He was 25. I was 18. We got married and lived happily ever after. Yeah. Dating was so easy. We went to church every night, and after church, we'd go to the restaurant with everybody else, the whole gang. And we'd sit around a big round table and talk and laugh and have fun. That was our date. We didn't have those, dates like some people do. But yeah. It was all churchy. We loved it. That was our life. Church was our life. When Grandpa or Larry proposed to me, it was so romantic, so romantic. We were driving down the road talking about our life hereafter, and he goes, I guess it would be nice if I asked you if you'd marry me. I said, yeah. See, we were very romantic. I mean, he was on his knees. Well, actually, he was on the accelerator. We met in July, and we got married the following April. So, yeah. And then, we had our family plan, too. We were going to have a girl first, and then we're going to have a boy. And so we had a girl. 2 years after we were married, we had a girl. 2 years later, we had a boy. 364 days later, we had twin boys. Whoops. What I saw in Larry when we first started dating is he was a dedicated Christian. He loved the Lord with all of his heart. In the church, he's very active in the church. And that was my heart. That's what I wanted. I wanted a good Christian husband, and I got one. Hershey chocolate became our life in 1967. Larry started to work there and worked there for 33 years. And then I don't remember the date I started, but I remember I worked there 5 years off and on. I worked there for like 2.5 years, and then I quit to take care of my mom. And then the boss had told Bernays, I sure wish Mary had come back. And I said, I sure wish I could go back. And I did. And I worked 2.5 more years. So, yeah. My position at Hershey's was a tour guide. I would start people at the beginning of in the lobby and give them a tour through the plant and tell them what everybody was doing about this being the hot end and this being different things in Hershey. And one day, a group came in from a facility, and they were showing them, they were in 2 different groups. And I got this call and said, Mary, would you please come and help me? I got a lady that's out of hand. She had a mental situation she didn't know. And so I said, sure. So I went in from the office where I was, and I went in for the tour. The caregiver said, oh, no, she's fine. She was headbutting her really hard. But she said, she's fine. And so we walked on. And I stayed with the group in case something happened. I could, escort them out. We got to the bottom of the stairs, and I don't know if you've ever gone on the tour or not, but at the bottom of the stairs, there's a kiss machine. And it drops the kisses down like this. And I said to the lady, isn't this neat? And she reared back like this, and she slugged me so hard that it gave me a whiplash. But before I could move, she did it again and hit me so hard that she gave me a whiplash. So we get to the end of the tour, and the lady at the other group says, so how did she do? And the lady at our group says, oh, she did really good. And I think she did really good. Of course, it had to go a little further than that. It had to go, to Pennsylvania and all that, report all of that. But I've never been hit so hard in my life. Come to find out, she wasn't even supposed to leave the facility. They didn't have permission to take her out of the facility. And her parents were so afraid that I was going to sue them. And my boss looked her square in the eye and said, if it was anybody else in this department, you would have something to worry about, but Mary would never sue you. And I think, you're right, I won't. Yeah, and Larry had some stories to tell, but I can't tell his stories. But when I would take my people along the catwalk, and he would be down working on the kiss machine, he would put on a show for him, for all my visitors. He'd put on a show, and he'd have the people all around him putting on a show for us. So he made it a lot more interesting. He loved working there. He just didn't like going to work and coming home, but he loved it while he was there. So I worked there a total of 5, and he worked there 33 years. And after we quit Hershey, or he retired, I quit. Hershey, then we started working as camp hosts. And we worked for the state of California for 5 years, different places, and for Woods Lake and Caples Lake and Silver Lake, 16 years. And I sure do miss it. Yeah, I do. So we cleaned all the campgrounds when they'd leave. We cleaned the bathrooms. We cleaned the whole picnic area and all of that. But most of all, we were friendly to the campers. And that made them want to come back. And we became very good friends with a lot of the campers. Until this day, we're still friends with some of them. But there was one particular couple that came, and they brought like 10 or 12 teenagers with them. And he was the superintendent of Stockton Unified School District. They would bring the people that didn't have a good home life or something, and they'd bring them to our campground, and I'll never forget it. Some of them had never seen a tree, had never seen a lake, had never seen the outdoors, the great outdoors. They'd just seen Stockton and its inner city. And it was just so neat because I'm still friends with those people because they were so wonderful with those kids. That's a memory I won't forget because they'd take them up the hills hiking, and the kids would have to pick up trash all along the way. And they loved it. They loved it because they were feeling useful. And it was just, you see a different side of people when they're out in the wilderness and get to pray. It's just a whole different story. So, yeah. when Larry passed away, and we had our little memorial up there. Some of the campers were camping that day, and they came down and saw a picture of him posted, and they came down and told us what great host he was. And that was, really, really good. So.
One of the things I really, really loved about Larry is he loved to narrate. He loved to tell stories, and boy, could he tell them. We had so much fun together in him telling those stories.
We are just south of Elk on Highway 1, headed toward Point Arena. This is our first stop, just to look it over. We are at Hodd's Point here in Fort Bragg. This is the spot that we come to and make phone calls and go to McDonald's and come down and eat. And a lady that goes to the same church we go to, her daughter hooked to it. Well, the lady does too. What's this house? This night right on the ocean. Boy, does she keep her on floor to go to the ocean, does she? There we go. Come on, y'all. Lock your door and let's go. What do you want us to do?
There you go.
We are still at Woods Lake. This is Mary sitting by the fire. Hi, Mary. There you go. And today is September 25th, 2003. And the fall foliage has set in. What do you think? Look at these colors. Beautiful. And we still have blue jays. As you can hear.
It was just a lot of fun camping with our families because we just laugh a lot. And that's, to us, that's what makes camping, campfire and laughing, that's and I find that people that laugh a lot have more joy. They just have joy. Larry and I were married 56 and a half years. And for us, don't fight about something. Walk away. And it's just easier, and get your mind cleared and then discuss the situation. Don't just come back ready to fight. That doesn't solve anything. And number one, a godly marriage is so important. Just to have Jesus the center of your marriage. And I know people think that we went to church way too much. I don't regret one thing about our marriage because God was always there. And we know that, we didn't always agree, but it doesn't mean you got to fight about it. It means you got to discuss it or walk away and think about it. And a lot of times just thinking about it will make you think, wow, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I said something I shouldn't have said. And just sometimes just walking away. We keep our minds and our eyes on Jesus and know what God gave us, the spouse that we've got, that He will keep that marriage together.
I'm getting ready to leave this world. I'm getting ready for the gates of pearl. Keeping my watch, watching both day and night. I'm getting ready to leave this world.
The one thing that's given me hope is the Lord. Because I have the joy of the Lord in my heart, and I know that I am a Christian, and I know He is my best friend. And when I have a tough spot, I just go to Him. And I know I could go to people, but I don't choose to do that. I choose to go to the Lord. And the Lord has brought me through some really tough spots. And it's all because of the joy of the Lord and His grace. The Lord is my life. He is my life. And I'm not perfect for sure, but as far as serving the Lord, I love Him with all of my heart. And it's without God, I wouldn't even want to know. Larry's been there for me, and I've been there for Larry, but We never, situations, we could rely on each other, and we always relied on the Lord. When he was on strike at Hershey, that was a pretty trying time. We had 4 kids, got $86 a week to walk the picket line. And then we went to the welfare office to try to get help, like food stamps in the olden days, it was called. And they said, no, we could not get them. We could not qualify. I had 4 children, but we were legally married, so they would not help us. And Larry and I were able to work it out. Well, actually, Larry and I didn't work it out. God worked it out. At that moment, my niece came and visited us, and she said, why hasn't the church helped you? And we said, we haven't told anybody, what's happening. Nobody knows. And she went to our pastor, and his name was Jerry Reynolds, and she said, my aunt and uncle are struggling. And she told him, because I had no idea. Well, the next Sunday morning at church, he told our congregation that we were struggling. And he said, I'm not even going to ask them to come forward. I'm just going to ask you to go put money in their lap. Larry and I sit there and cried the whole time, and they poured money in our lap, and there was enough to pay our rent, make our car payments, and to help the neighbors buy groceries. And because they were struggling too. And so God has always been there. And one other time, a testimony, there was this young man at the altar, and he had holes in his shoes. And Larry said, I'm going to buy you a new pair of shoes. So he come to me and said, Mary, I need $20. Write me a check for $20. I'm going to give this young man some shoes. And I go, I can't write you a check for $20. We don't even have $20 in the bank. I can't do that. He goes, God will provide, because he told me to tell this man. So I thought, no big deal. My mom's with us. So we got in the car, and I said, Mom, I need to borrow $20. And she goes, I don't have $20. I promise you, the next day, on a Monday morning, when the mail came, there was a check in my mailbox from a lady I had met one time from Washington with $20 in it. No reason, just $20. And so God has always provided. And so that is situations I'll never forget, because God was there. He was there for us. A life well lived. For me, a life well lived is with the person that God put you with. The Bible says, what God has joined together, let no man put asunder, and nobody do. When we got married, somebody said, it's not going to last. It'll never last. Well, good for them, because it did. And it's like a life well lived is depending on God 100% and trusting Him, but most of all, loving Him, because sometimes we depend on people that we don't really love, but having a heart for God, and knowing that He loves you back, and knowing what sacrifices He gave for you is a completely different story. So I sacrificed getting to go out. Really? What would happen if you had went out, But you don't sacrifice for God. He sacrificed for you. He gave His life for us. And so I would suggest that anybody follow in the footsteps of the Lord and use that old saying. I just used it last week. What would Jesus do? And would Jesus be proud of me? Am I living a life that the Lord can say, this is my child, in whom I am well pleased? Are we doing what God wants us to do, or are we doing what we want to do? To live the best life in the world is to do what you think God wants you to do, and get the right spouse. I just want to say that I had 4 children, and the first one was born after I was married 2 years, the second one 2 years later, and the three and fourth 364 days later. And God gave those to us for a purpose. I was always very proud of our children, because we'd go into a restaurant and we'd have 4 high chairs sitting up there, and people would come in and say how good our kids were. They'd leave and say, man, those kids are great. But we expected them to be that way, and so that's why they were that way. Not that they were mistreated, but I mean, they were roughhousers here sometimes, but when they went out, they were very, very good. And today, I'll start with Lori. I am so proud of Lori. The things that she has had to do has just really, it's been tough. But she has said, till death do us part. And she has been there, and she has sacrificed and done. With Mark, I'm very, very proud of him for being a pastor, being called of God, and knowing his calling. Tom, same way. I am so proud. I'm very proud of all the kids that I know that God has called them into his service. I'm very proud of John. John went to live with the Lord at an early age. But the thing that makes me the happiest is that he did ask the Lord to forgive him for all that he had done wrong and come back into his heart. John's best thing in life for him was when he was a missionary in the Philippines. He absolutely loved it, and it was a good thing for him. And God just really said, you're my child. So I know that he's with the Lord, and I know that Tom, sometimes it's tough, and I know that. Tom, that he's answering the call of God. And for Bernice and Nicole, they're just following right along with what God wants them to do, and I'm very proud of them too. And David, I'm proud of David too, because he's lived a tough life for what he's living here. All of the physical stuff has not been easy for him. And I just thank God because he's given us such a wonderful family, all the grandkids, all of them, the great-grandkids. It's just like, wow, and as they expand out, and get married and give us more grandkids, it's just like God has so blessed all of us. Not saying there's no situations, because there are, that God has always been there for them. All of my grandkids, the spouses, all of them, I pray for you guys every day. But my advice to you, to all my grandkids, is put God first in your life. Even when going gets tough, keep going. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep your eyes on Jesus. And that's from a grandmother's heart that says, I love all of you guys. And I know that God has something special for all of you. I love you. When Larry went to live with the Lord, it was really hard. Things we don't understand. We don't understand. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why does this happen? Why? But we won't always know the answer. Do not let Satan come in and trip you with, it's because of this or it's because of that. No, some things are not meant to be, that you're not meant to know the answer to. I will never know why God did not heal Larry completely, but I do know where he is, and I do know that it was in God's plan or it would not have happened.